time frame on Dalvin Cook and DeAndre Hopkins as now rubber begins to meet road with opening training camps coming up next week and beyond?
I would think that DeAndre Hopkins is on a roster. Just my opinion. I believe he'll be on a roster before the start of training camp. He doesn't want to show up halfway through and try to microwave chemistry with a new quarterback and a new offense and just kind of figure it out, even though he does have familiarity with the two places that have shown the most interest and that he visited, with Bill O'Brien in New England and Tim Kelly, along with Mike Vrabel in Tennessee. He knows that, if he's going to use this year to kind of, vault his career after a couple of years marred by injuries and a suspension, he's got to get the work in. So I think the timeline for DeAndre Hopkins is probably prior to the start of training camp. But Dalvin Cook, I don't know that same level of urgency exists. I mean, you talk about the teams that are in on him. I think they're all pretty well documented. I mean, the Dolphins certainly would like him to end up back home in Miami. The Jets, Dalvin and Woody Johnson follow each other on Twitter. If that's not the most 2023 thing outside of saying they follow each other on Threads, I don't know what is. So that's certainly a possibility. The Patriots, the Broncos, depending on the price, all those teams are potentially in on it here. But I think that for all these running backs, as well as some of those other guys who might be looking at extensions or trying to get something done before the start of the season, when you're looking at a Jonathan Taylor in Indianapolis, for instance, it makes a lot of sense to see how things play out with all the franchise tag guys on Monday, see if anybody gets a deal done, see what the value of that contract is, and then to sort of be able to react, if necessary, to the marketplace. I think that the other thing, Rich, is we're just talking about the running back system, and such a topic is you are getting to that point where, because guys are not getting the top-level contracts, unless you're Christian McCaffrey, and, Dalvin Cook signed a really big contract 3 years ago, so did Alvin Kamara, but most running backs are kind of in the same neighborhood in terms of money. You have to wonder if you're some of these second- or third-year guys, and you might be banged up or you might be coming off an injury, what's your incentive to play all 17 games? What's your incentive to push yourself back out onto the field? I mean, take, J.K. Dobbins, for instance, who was not at minicamp. There were some questions about that. It was attributed to a injury-related issue. J.K. Dobbins, I want to say, is due $1.3 million this season. He was as productive as any back in the NFL down the stretch last season, and that was without Lamar Jackson as his quarterback. If you're J.K. Dobbins and you get, you twist your ankle in week one, are you pushing yourself back out there knowing that even if you have a massive season in your contract year, like Josh Jacobs and Saquon Barkley, you're not getting top dollar? I think that business side of it really is going to play in. And obviously some guys are going to be wired a little bit differently, and they're going to push through anything because that's what they want to do. There's other guys who are going to look at this as business people and say, eventually when we get into the negotiation, if I have not enough carries because I've been hurt, you're going to use that against me. But if I got too many carries, you're going to say, well, you got too much mileage on you. It's a really delicate type of a balance here, and I do think that that's going to be a topic of conversation among the running backs. A lot of these guys work out together. They stay in touch with one another. If you're battling injuries, you really have to wonder, are these guys going to make sure that they're out there on Sundays, knowing that even if they have the best year and the healthiest year in a contract year, it still might not mean that they get paid top dollar.
Spectacular point, Tom, because it sounds like running backs are getting desperate, and that's not a negative connotation. I'm talking about they see the writing on the wall. They are reading the room. We had Austin Eckler on yesterday. He's saying if I'm making less than the number 3 wide receiver, it pisses me off, and they do not see the way out. They don't see the guy, although they're hoping it's Saquon or Josh Jacobs, that busts down the wall and pushes the market back north again. They don't see somebody doing that. They see more and more guys coming out of college, and they see more and more guys kind of like Eckler used to be, who can take the jobs of the veterans or deflate the market appropriately at the position. So if somebody tries what you just put out there on the table, I wouldn't be surprised or criticize them for it, Tom.
It's also about, the proliferation of the outside zone scheme where, with the success of guys like Sean McVay and Kyle Shanahan, more and more teams are running that style of offense, which historically has been more about the scheme and the line than it's been about the back. I mean, you go back into the 90s, pre-Terrell Davis with the Broncos, and that was always what it was, which was just kind of plug and play different people, and no matter who it was, he's going to run for 1,500 yards. Well, why, in that case, then, would you not just draft a couple guys every year, hope one of them works out? I mean, look at the number of different running backs who have been productive for Kyle Shanahan through the years in San Francisco. That's certainly a piece of it. There have been backs in the past, of course, who historically have gotten paid. I mean, Adrian Peterson back in 2011, I want to say got like $12 million a year. And there's like 3 guys or 2 guys now who are even making that 12 years later. In 2011, the highest paid player in the NFL was Aaron Rodgers at, I believe, $22 million per year. Highest paid quarterbacks now are 50 plus. The running back market has actually gone down in the past decade or so, or 12 years since the 2011 collective bargaining agreement. I mean, I've heard some of the creative types of ideas about making running backs eligible to sign earlier and things like that. Realistically, besides the fact that it's baked into the CBA how this works already, but realistically, they're not going to just carve something out for running backs here. You just have to wonder, have the days of a Derrick Henry style workhorse who is going to be the focal point of the offense passed by a little bit? Because these things, Rich, tend to be cyclical. And as much as we look at it right now and it's, oh man, there's so much outside zone and teams use 3 different backs, 10 years from now, we might be all back to gap scheme and power, and it's the big 240-pound back again.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's possible that could swing that direction here, but that doesn't help the guys right now who are trying to get paid. And trust me, they are all looking at one another. They're all looking around at the marketplace here. They don't know exactly what to do. I would also say, and this is, listen, I'm not going to criticize Le'Veon Bell, but the one guy who tried this, the one guy who turned down an offer that I reported at the time, I mean, think about this relative to what the numbers we're talking about now. Le'Veon Bell, on the deal he turned down, and I want to say it was 2017, might have been 2018, because they did that a couple of times, was $30 million over 2, about $42 million over 3.
Wow.
He wanted $17 million a year to get paid like in between the number 2 receiver and the starting running back. He turned that down. He sat out a year. He played 1 year on the tag, sat out another year, got free agency, got like, I want to say $30 million or so guaranteed from the Jets, but then that was the end of his career. And he was never quite the same player after taking that time off. Does Josh Jacobs or even a Saquon Barkley try it and just say, I'm going to be healthy and I'm going to take a year of mileage off my body and I'll sit out, and if you want to tag me again next year, go for it? It's possible, but there's a pretty recent cautionary tale on that it might not ultimately be the best thing for your career, your earning power, or your life.
Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.